people coming to you asking, what are we going to do? When are we going to return to the office? What do the safety protocols look like? And I would say probably a lot of leaders weren't really sure of that answer. Again, because a lot of them had not experienced something like this. Again, what did you see there? And then if there are some tips for leaders as we start to open back up and go back in the office to create that safe environment.
All right. Any kind of change is going to induce an emotional charge, fear, loss, uncertainty, shame. And we all react to that or deal with that very differently. And I don't think there's a lot of tools out there to teach how to create safety or psychological safety in the environment. That's something I spend time working with people on, because there's no sort of Wikipedia page for that, if you will, and with a tremendous amount of resources. So my thinking is, as a leader, your first job is to build trust and build relationships with your team. If that's not there, you're always going to be tied to leading change. People don't want to necessarily face change because of the emotional charge. So anchor it in trust, build a relationship, get feedback from folks, take action from it, give them credit. I mean, simple little tasks like that, and certainly being transparent to the degree you can be. And I'll share a quick story with you if I could.
Yes.
So I had to do a reorg a few years ago. I had a gentleman leave my team, and I had to make a decision. Should I replace him, or I could do a bit of a reorg myself and sort of, it was a sales region, give part of the regions to the adjacent folks. And I did a bunch of research, interviewed people. I didn't find anyone I loved. And so I got the approval to collapse the region, but it was going to be a massive change to one gentleman in particular who'd been with the firm for 20 something years. And, he was going to go from having worked all these years to not having to do a lot of overnights to suddenly doing a bunch of overnights again. So I reached out to him and I said, his name was Dave. I said, Dave, I'm thinking about reorging. It was Virginia, in this case, the state of Virginia, which, as you might know, doesn't seem that big, but it's a really massive piece of dirt, especially for a traveling salesperson. And I called him up and I said, Dave, I'm thinking about not replacing the gentleman that just left. I'd love to get your feedback on how we might restructure the state if, there was no one living down in the Richmond area. And he about fell out of his chair because he had never been approached with this type of business strategy question before. And he said, man, can I get 3 or 4 days and think about it? Sure. So we meet at a Starbucks, whatever, a few days later. He comes back to me with a business plan that looked 70-ish, 80% like what I had already designed. But guess whose business plan this now was?
It's his.
It's his. Mm-hmm. And so there's radical change that was disrupting his apple cart. And we did do some things to sort of give him some more prestige, bigger budget. We added some resources to his team, things like this, which was necessary, but made him feel better about it too. But now this new business plan was his. So instead of me coming to him saying, hey, Whitney, here's the new deal, take it or leave it, which sometimes is the case, and particularly in Wall Street, we had a very collaborative discussion around it. He comes in, he dives in head first, has an amazing 1.5, 2-year run, and ends up getting promoted.
Wow.
Now let's pretend I took the exact opposite approach and said, Dave, here's your deal, take it or leave it. What happens? He goes to his peers and says, my boss is a jerk. He dumped this thing in my lap. I mean, so talk about not just building trust in a relationship, but your actions speak louder than words. And that was one of my favorite examples.